Abraham comes along and says it's not enough to know that there's one infinite God, and it's certainly not a good thing to try to escape it in the hope that I can escape the idea that my life is constantly under his awareness. I have to draw sensible conclusions. If there's one God, one infinite power whose will determines everything that exists, I can know something about myself. You see, if there is this infinite source to existence who is always and totally aware of whatever is happening, and I exist, that means I exist totally because he wills me to. My existence, my clothing, my food, my sustenance, my air, everything that helps me to exist is because of him. If he exists and I exist, I now know not only that he created me and that he wills me to exist at every instant of my existence, but I also know that in this relationship between him and me, I was created entirely for my own good. Man was created for his own pleasure, to achieve the maximum possible from his existence. I could not possibly have been created for the good of God. Because being infinite and totally self-contained, he had no needs. Again, seemingly impossible for us to conceive of creation without motive. But we can understand it in degrees. If you go into a store and they give you a jacket or a coat or something you're buying, why do they give it to you? Because you gave them money. Friends, on the other hand, may give you things without money. Is it because they have no needs? Why are they giving you things? The need for friendship. You give a poor person something. You want to be good. Your parents give you life and sustenance. It's one of the highest levels of altruism. Being a parent, bringing a life into the world and sustaining it. But even there, the parent has needs. To see himself as good, to be giving, to get pleasure out of life. But if we go one step further from the finite over that step to the infinite, we know that an infinite being who creates me and gives to me does it for the total altruistic reason of giving, can have no needs whatsoever. He existed infinitely, totally self-contained. He can't need us at all. Now, you know that we call God, this power infinite, Ein Sof, endless. We use a negative because we know that we cannot know anything about the nature of the infinite. What we can know are that those properties of the finite, which the finite has because it's finite, cannot pertain to that power. And therefore, in our terms, we do things from motivation of need, whether it's a lower physical need or a higher need for spirituality or to be a good person. But an infinite being goes beyond to have no needs. What you and I call altruistic when we help people is relatively altruistic. We don't do it for money. We don't do it to get patted on the back. We do it just for the sake of goodness. God, so to speak, goes beyond that because he doesn't have that need at all. God's love, therefore, is the totally altruistic, total giving without any taking. Now, giving and love in Hebrew is really the same word, hav. In Hebrew, in the Bible, it says, hav li banim. Rachel says, give me children. Hav is the root of the word ahava, to love. Giving is a consequence of loving, or alternative, love is created when giving is done. And so you have here this infinite being who wills us to exist. I know that he is the totally infinitely giving being. He didn't need anything, and yet he gave me existence and everything that sustains it. So again, when we talk about God as infinitely loving, it's not because we're trying to be nice to him. Who knows, maybe he has a mean streak, but we'll be willing, we'll say something nice to him to stroke his ego. No, it's not because we're trying to be pious. It's because we can know it to be so. An infinite being can't have any needs, and therefore what he gives us is entirely for our good, because he has no self-motivation. He's totally focused outside of himself, because he has no needs. And so Abraham says, well, here I am, a human being created by God for my own good, for my own pleasure. I was created by a being who totally wants to give, and he created me for the sake of getting maximum pleasure out of my existence. And by the way, you can even see this, forgetting about looking at God for a moment, you can see it by just looking at man. In what way are all human beings alike? If you analyze it, you'll find that what unites all human beings is the fact that all their decision making, everything they choose to do, is based on what will give them pleasure. If you want to know what something was created for, look at what they do. You look at a watch and you ask, well, what was it made for? To pick your teeth, to type newspapers, or to tell time? You look at what it does, and what it does will tell you is what will tell you the purpose for why it was for what it was created. So too, everything that man does is for pleasure. Now, I hope that doesn't sound too selfish. We'll try to broaden it out in a little bit. Can we first admit that that's so? Every human being makes a decision based on what will give them pleasure. Adolf Eichmann, what gave him pleasure is killing Jews. What gives Mother Teresa of Calcutta pleasure is helping poor people on the streets of Calcutta. She doesn't kill Jews, she helps poor people, because to her, helping poor people is much more pleasurable than killing Jews. Eichmann kills Jews because to him that's more pleasurable than helping poor people. What about the SS man who didn't especially like killing Jews, but he was loyal to the SS, so he did it anyway? And so he killed Jews because they gave him the orders. Does that have anything to do with pleasure? Right, to that man, he's chosen that being loyal gives him more pleasure than being disloyal. And so he'll kill the Jews because loyalty is what gives him most pleasure. I remember I once gave this class on a cold winter day here in Jerusalem. There was a portable heater in the room. And somebody said, "Oh, Rabbi, what if I take my hand and stick it right into the heater and burn it to a crisp?" How would you see that as a decision based on giving me pleasure? The answer is because at that point, proving me wrong would give him more pleasure than having his hand. We're not saying people can't make mistakes. But everybody makes decisions based on getting pleasure.